Uh-huh.
Great. Excellent. Okay, and so yes, if you click on that first link in your email, this is how you activate your account, and in the process, you'll also be setting your password.
Okay.
And the password can be, we're pretty password friendly. It just has to be 8 characters or more. We don't care if it's capital letters or pound signs, as long as it's 8 characters. That's all you need to enter your password in.
Okay. So let me. Okay.
Yep, and then just hit
Oh,
finish.
your box here.
Yeah, you can minimize it. There should be an orange arrow that makes it smaller, so it doesn't take up. Yeah, there you go. I know the GoToMeeting sometimes takes up the screen. Great, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can hit save. And then something that I recommend is it's good to use in Google Chrome. Do you know is that if you bookmark this page and
Mm-hmm.
if we put it on the bookmarks bar, if you ever want to get back to Shadow Health and
There it
log
is.
in, you just click on that and it'll take you to here. You might have to log in again the next time you do it, but at least it'll take you right there.
Right.
And if you want to click on where it says view course,
Okay.
once you do that, this will take you through the user agreement, and basically it just says what we do with data and that you're not going to reverse engineer our software, which I'm sure with all the free time you have would be a fun little weekend project.
I know, right?
I don't even think I could reverse engineer it. It'd be too complicated. Oh, it's actually the one all the way on the right. There you go. Only takes about 2 hours to read, so if you ever have a slow weekend, you're more
Have
than
that
welcome to
time,
read it. Yeah,
that free time.
yeah,
I
exactly.
know, right?
And then if you scroll down here, it basically says you need a computer, a broadband internet connection, headphones. We recommend headphones. If you have decent computer speakers, it's fine. But some of the heart sounds that we replicate are low bass, and if you have like low quality laptop speakers, it won't replicate those as authentically. And that's why we recommend either
Mm-hmm.
headphones or just decent speakers. You'll be fine.
Okay.
And if you just want to hit return to dashboard, which is the button on the right hand side, yep, you got it. Great. And actually, before we dive right into one of the assignments, if you could tell me a little bit more about your program. So I know you're expecting about 120 students. Does that sound right for the fall?
It is. Yes. This is it's basically a hybrid class where the
Okay.
students are introduced into how to assess their patients. So these are new nursing students who have never had these courses before. So we're trying to um, have shadow health as part of their clinical experience as to how they will go about assessing the different systems of the body
Sure.
as well as doing a health history.
Okay. And is this?
So,
Mhm. No, that makes sense. And
oh, go ahead.
are you going to integrate this into a health assessment course, or is this in a fundamentals course? Or
Yes,
okay.
yes, it's a health assessment. It's a I guess you could say fundamentals, but yes, this is their first health assessment course.
Okay, that makes sense. And this is a traditional. It sounds like it's a traditional kind of program where students would attend lecture and have a lab. Is that true?
Yes, yes, yes. But most of their lectures are online. The
Okay.
only time they come on campus is to do the labs. So we're going
Okay.
to integrate shadow health as part of their clinical experience.
I see. And is the plan right now? Obviously, it still may be. You may be developing it, but would the plan be to complete shadow health before coming to lab or after lab?
Oh, actually, I want to have them do it before they come into lab
Okay.
over each system that we go over. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And so, but the student would let's pretend I was one of your students, and let's say it's the week we do respiratory. The expectation would be I would watch the online video lecture, I would read the textbook, I would do shadow health, and then I would come to lab. Does that sound like how the instructional activities would work?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think With green students, that's because you're having them watch the video lecture and do the textbook, and then do shadow health. That should be fine. Some programs just try and do the textbook and then shadow health. And for really green students, they just need a little bit more content knowledge to effectively practice in our platform. But because they're watching online lectures, they should be fine.
Right, right. Because they only meet basically once a week.
Yes, no,
So
that makes sense.
we're only we're only face to face with them once a week.
Yeah, it sounds definitely like a true hybrid course.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. And
So, but I do have a question for you, Chris.
absolutely.
So let's say that this week we did respiratory, and then will they? And then we're into the next week. Will they be able to go back and review any content and stuff for respiratory, even though we're past that week?
Yeah,
They can
great
always
question.
go back and review.
That's correct. Even if it's after the due date, they can still do as many assignments as they want. They just get flagged as late. But there's nothing that prevents them from getting additional practice if they need it.
Oh, okay, okay,
And I'll show you how
great.
it works once and all the feedback once we go through an assignment. I think that'll be more clear. But that's a very good question.
Okay.
And were there any assignments that you think this might replace? I don't know if you've even discussed that level of detail yet with your other faculty.
No, we haven't.
Okay, and obviously we can once I get you set up in our next meeting, you can talk more about what it might replace. And the only reason I mention that is usually a health assessment course is a very dense course, and if you just add this on top of everything else, it can be a lot for students, and so that's why it's just a good thing to
Mm-hmm.
consider. What else maybe is redundant because of this addition, just to make the workload manageable
Mm-hmm.
for students. But again, that's a question we can worry about for next time.
Right. Okay.
And the last question is the role you ultimately want Shadow Health to play in your course. It sounds like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that one of the reasons why you decided to integrate Shadow Health was you want students to get additional practice opportunities and have them better prepared for lab. Does that sound like the job that Shadow Health is helping fill in your course?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. And at this point, you'll notice that do you see where it says 0 assignments in this course?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So that's because we usually it's about 5 to 6 weeks before the course starts to release the final version in your course. However, we do give you access to the most current version and example students in our training course. So you can practice and go do
Oh,
some of the
okay.
assignments. But this way, it just ensures that you get the most current version if we wait a little bit to push those assignments. But you can see
Okay.
exactly, and so if I'm going to click on, do you see where it says training course right here?
Yes.
So I just clicked on my resources. You logged in, clicked on my resources, and here's how you can get to some of these. Not only can you see example students, but you can try out all of our assignments. So this is
Oh, okay.
you're technically signed in as a sandbox instructor, which is nice because there's nothing you can break here. So you don't have to work. We purposely made this so faculty could play around and get familiar with our system. And you'll notice there's a bunch of different versions here. I'm actually just going to go to the health assessment version. This is the one that you want. This is the one that your students will use.
Okay.
And I'm going to click on View Course. And then you'll see a long list of assignments. And this is what more or less it's going to look like when you log into your course. You'll
Mm-hmm.
see a course overview section. This will list all the different instructors attached to this course. There's a course pin, which I'll cover a little bit later, but this is important when students register so they get attached to your course. And then this is where all the general, I'll go into the details of this a little bit later, but because I just want to go over high level right now. But this is where you can set up your assignment dates, what kind of settings you want in the assignment, things like that, or all take place up here.
Okay.
And then as you go down, you'll notice that this is where there's a list of all the assignments that are available. And what we're going to do is we're going to go right into the HE&T assignment. And
Okay.
then we can view the student results book for each of these assignments here, which we'll also go over in a second. just so you can see the end result once students complete an assignment, because that's going to be most of your workflow as a faculty member, is looking at their results, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this assignment, and this is exactly what you can do later if you want to try some of these out yourself. And I'm going to click Try as a Student up here in the upper right-hand corner.
Okay. Okay.
And then,
so we'll always have that option to try as a student.
That's correct.
And that gives us the view of what the students would see, correct?
Yes, it gives you the view of what students will see in the actual assignment. Their course overview will look slightly different than yours, but not that different, because they obviously don't see a student results book. But this is exactly as your students will experience this assignment.
Okay.
And depending how fast your internet connection is, will determine how fast this loads.
Yeah, I'm out in an area where it's not always the greatest.
Okay. It looks like it's going, but it's a little slow, depending on, again, how fast it is. Like, I think at home I get about 40 megabytes per second, which is pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good. And it'll load in about 25 seconds, but this isn't too bad. It'll just maybe take a minute or two. But if we always recommend using Google Chrome, just because it'll load right in the browser. Like kind of like how YouTube works, where you don't have to download any additional plugins; it just plays. And if you can use Internet Explorer and some other ones, but then they make you download a plugin. So that's why we always Google Chrome is nice.
Oh, okay.
We do offer speech to text to talk to our patients, but that only works on Google Chrome currently. So that's why we recommend it, even though it'll work on other browsers.
Right. Oh, okay.
And so now it's just loading the individual components, and then it should let us in maybe a couple seconds. And let's see if there's anything else running that might be slowing your computer down. Whenever we screen share like this, it always takes up some of your computer's bandwidth. But
yeah, it may be.
Yeah, because we're basically. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just about to say. I think I only have my email open.
It looks like it's still loading. It's just going a little slow. But
yeah,
we'll see, because it seems like it's hung up here, and normally it should just go straight through. Yeah, you don't really have that much else open. These shouldn't be. iCloud sometimes can take up a lot, but it's usually not that bad. The other thing we can do as well is I could always share my screen, just because it takes up. Let's wait, because whenever we screen share like this, it takes up, because what's happening basically is you're streaming basically your computer to mine, and that just takes up a lot of processing power. So what we could do is I can just share my screen and walk you through it.
Okay.
If this is being slow, which it might be, let's give it another little bit, and then if it's still going slow, then I can share it on mine. And then I would just try again on. Let me check your computer settings too. Go to. All right, so you've got 4 gigs of RAM, a 64-bit operating system. It's an older chip, but it should still work. What we can do is, let me try closing out this, because these actually technically all take a little processing power. And let me run your task manager too. I'm just seeing if there's anything else that's taking up a lot of your computer's resources, because it should. This normally like 99% of the time, if it's going slow like this, that's what's going on. Should. There we go. Let's take a look. I mean, there's some things we can do to give your computer a little bit more of a pep. And if you do run into issues even after we get off, what you can do is you can contact our support, and they're pretty friendly, non-judgmental, even if you're not very tech savvy, to help you get some of the other things, just in case you need a little bit more oomph, just to run Shadow Health. But what we can do is I'll make myself the presenter again, and I'll just load it real quick on my computer. It shouldn't take very long. And let's actually kill it this time. Let's try that. And I'll make myself the presenter. And so I'm going to show this screen, and let me know when you can see my computer.
Okay, I can see everything.
Perfect. And so I'm going to go into actually the same course that you were going into, which is our training and practice course. And I'm going to go to this assignment. And again, what you can do is you can try again when we're not on GoToMeeting that's taking up a lot of your resources. And if it still doesn't work, you can go to the help desk in the upper right-hand corner. And they'll be able to do some other things to tweak your performance, just in case you need a little bit more juice. But I think once you try it when we're out of GoToMeeting, it should work fine.
Okay.
But I'm going to do the same thing and load it on my computer. Let's see if my internet speed's going slow. I have a lot of tabs open too. Let me close out some of these. All righty. And again, once it's done loading, it'll go through the same part. And what we're going to see in a second is the pre-brief. And this is pretty much works how you think of it in traditional simulation. If you were in a lab, this is when the lab instructor would go over, all right, here's kind of the case overview. Here's what you're expected to do. And that's not surprisingly the first part of the assignment. And then they'll go in the room with the patient. And actually, let me have it so you can actually hear. It'll be over my computer speaker, so you won't be able to hear everything, but I think you'll get a good sense about what's going on.
Okay.
And once it's finished loading up the assignment, you should see Preceptor Diana. Here we go.
Welcome back. This is the HEENT assignment.
And I'm going to mute her. But this is where, again, as I mentioned, this is the pre-brief. She says, welcome back. In this assignment, it's 8 a.m. It's the first morning she's a patient here at Shadow Health. And then she mentions the context of why you have to do an HENT exam, even though she was here for a foot injury. Because her nose was feeling stuffy, you're going to do a full HENT exam on her. And so that's where we give the student the context for what they're expected to do in the assignment. Tells them approximately how long it will take to complete and what they're supposed to do. And please, if you have questions along the way, I have a pretty healthy self-esteem, so don't feel bad for interrupting me. Because it is, I mean, we designed it to be straightforward, but of course, there's a lot of reasonable questions to ask along the way. And again, here's where it tells them more about what they're being assessed on. In this case, it's subjective and objective data collection. This is what you should do in the assignment. And at this point, then, you can hit Start Exam.
Okay.
And then here's where you can go in the room with the patient. And it might appear a little bit juddery for you just because you're watching a stream of my computer, but I think you'll get the idea. And this first part is a safety and privacy tutorial. And I'm going to dismiss this for now, but this is where it walks through for students. Really these basic things they have to do every time they go in the room with the patient. So for example, it'll want them to wash their hands. It'll want them to confirm the patient. And so for example, you want to check the patient armband. And this is where I can say... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just about to say, good. This here correlates with them having to remember to do their safe entry and exit, which includes all the things here that you're showing me with Shadow Health.
Yeah, and that's...
so it just reinforces that.
Absolutely. And of course, you want them to get this in this habit so it becomes second nature, and that's something that they get to practice mentally in our simulation.
Yes, great.
Oh, let me unmute her so you can actually hear Tina. But basically how this works, just to orient you to what we're looking at, is as I mentioned, they would go through and do all these basic safety tasks before even they get started. And they could check the orders already. They could examine the night nurse report in our EHR over here on the right-hand side. So they would have already found this out in another assignment. She's a 28-year-old, and she has this foot injury. So, for example, if you asked her, like, what brings you in today, she'll obviously still talk about her foot because that's why she's in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I came in last night for my foot. It just wasn't healing right, and it really hurt.
And this is probably what the graduate faculty were showing you. This is what's really unique about our simulation is the fact we have this conversation engine. Because you'll notice it's not like a drop down of questions that I can ask her. The student actually has to construct these questions to do the patient interview. And so it's much more of an active learning process and less of a click fest. Because like someone like me who's not actually a nurse expert, my background's in educational technology. In some other software, I can just click all the questions and just basically it becomes a click fest because as long as I do everything, I'll get full points. Whether or not you know why I'm asking the questions and or I have some sort of rationale for them. And this is where
this is great.
Oh, great. And this is, of course, you could ask her follow-up questions. So, do you teach your students old carts or do you guys do PM? How do you guys teach them how to investigate an HPI?
Well, they got various methods that they can use.
Okay. Great. And then, of course, they could obviously ask her, like, when did you hurt your foot?
Right, because we've got several acronyms to help the students to know what follow-up questions should be next based on how the patient responds or
Perfect.
What you're actually trying to assess for.
Okay, that makes sense. And you can obviously implement any of them. I was just curious to how you guys coach students to do that. But you could ask her like, when did you hurt your foot? How did you hurt your foot?
I was changing a light bulb, and I had to use our little step stool to reach it. My foot slid off the bottom step, and it got all scraped up. I didn't realize how sharp the edge was.
And you could ask her, obviously, other questions like, do you have any allergies?
Yeah, I'm allergic to cats. And dust, too.
Now, one of the ways we measure students' clinical reasoning in these assignments is you'll notice that, and you can see a verbatim interaction of everything that they do. And so you have complete transparency over how they're actually interacting with the patient. And
now, can the students see this complete conversation as well?
That's correct. So as they're going through the assignment, they can go back and reference earlier parts. That's correct.
Okay.
And something that one way that we measure clinical reasoning is this type of example where you ask the patient, hey, do you have any allergies? And she said, yeah, I'm allergic to cats and dust too. But if you remember when we were looking at her wrist and her armband?
Wristband, she was allergic to penicillin, yeah.
And this is where we teach students to be very specific when you ask questions. So for example, if you ask her, do you have any medication allergies? Oops, I spelled that. I'll show you how the spell check works. I just misspelled medication. But so if the student actually misspells something, it'll ask them, did you mean medication?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm allergic to penicillin.
And this is where, again, we teach them to be more precise. So, for example, we also didn't ask her about any food allergies she might have, since sometimes patients just interpret, oh, allergies, oh, you mean like when I get runny noses and things like that, versus a medication allergy.
Right.
And we actually score students on that. So, for example, I'll show you what the end results look like as a little bit of a spoiler. But this is how you would interact with the patient. This is how you can ask questions. Tina understands about 250,000 questions, so she's pretty robust. If It's usually a good idea to remind students, though, to keep some things in mind. It's pretty neat, obviously, as you go through it. It feels like you're talking to a real person, but if, for example, you're not specific, like, for example, if I say, how did you hurt it?
I was changing a light bulb, and I had to
She'll
use our little
still
step
give an
stool to reach
answer
it.
for
My
some of
foot
those,
slid
or
off the
sometimes
bottom
she'll
step, and
clarify.
it got all scraped up. I didn't realize how sharp the edge was.
Because sometimes she doesn't know what it is referring to, and that's why you just have to, this is a good practice actually with patients in general, but they have to be specific when they're asking some questions to get the best answer. And then if you ask very complex compound questions, which you shouldn't with patients anyways, you should be more direct. She'll sometimes clarify and ask you what you actually mean by that. So that's just something to keep in mind to tell students, is that there's a little bit of a learning curve. We teach them all these tips and tricks in orientation, but usually it takes people about 10 or 15 minutes of talking to her before they really get it, and they can go real quick.
Oh, okay.
And then, so this is how the patient conversation would work and how you could collect the subjective information you need to effectively treat her. Did you have any questions about that? Obviously, you can go more in depth later.
Right. No, not yet.
Okay. And there's specific education empathy. So if your student so if I could say, I'm sorry to hear you hurt your foot.
Thanks.
And you can see that the student, because color-coded, intentionally tried to empathize in those areas. And in the health history assignment, we actually score them on if they educate and empathize at the appropriate moments.
Oh, okay.
And I'll show you how that works too. But real quick, while we're already in here, showed you how the patient conversation engine worked. And I'll show you how the physical exam works, obviously, in this type of medium fidelity simulation. So obviously, the student can't actually put their hands on the patient because it's virtual environment. But this is how we do the physical exam. So let's say, for example, and you'll notice there's a menu here where they can select different parts of an HENT exam to perform. And let's say I wanted to look in her ears. It'll just give you a reminder that you need to report your findings. But what happens is a body map will appear that will where you can click on the diamonds and they'll perform the action. So for example, if I look at her left ear. And how we do this is where the student has to report their findings. And so obviously it models in terms of how to hold, the otoscope and things like that. But this is where we score students on if they're reporting their findings correctly. So on the right-hand side, I'll get some wrong on purpose just so you can see. But this is where they have to go through and report their findings after looking in, let's say in this case, the ear. Another good example, and then you'll notice that it keeps a verbatim record of everything that they're doing. And let's say I wanted to inspect her. Let's go to inspect, and let's say I want to inspect her head. Here's where you'll notice that, again, it looks symmetrical, facial features look symmetrical. And when you look at appearance, if you want to look at the side of her face, we can see it looks like she's got a little bit of acne there, and she has a little bit of excessive hair growth. And so this is where the student then has to report some of these abnormal findings that they might see, and they get scored whether or not they report it accurately as they go through and they look at the patient.
Okay.
And you'll notice, again, they can do a full, they can look at her mouth, they can do a full exam, and then report all these findings. And this is how this is actually one of the ways we're actually better than if they just practice on a partner in class, because they get objectively scored on all this information versus, when they write up their findings on their partner, you have no way of knowing if what they're seeing, what they're accurately reporting. And so I'll show you what this looks like after the fact. So once I go through this whole assignment, I'll show you what the student will see. And I'm just going to end exam. This is where it also does the safety tutorial, making sure you wash the hands, you close the privacy curtain. her call, making sure that the desk is close to her and the call button is close. I'm just going to end exam, but that's something that they'd be expected to do after each assignment. And this is something that, again, you don't have to determine this right now, but some faculty really like these. We call them post-exam activities. And then other faculty will hide them just because of the time constraints that the students have. But I'll just give you an overview of what the learning objectives are in these, and you can figure out if these are already redundant or in your course. And so this first activity that they encounter is called the hallway.
Okay.
And they'll run into 3 people in the hallway. And the first person is always going to be Nurse Ron. He's a registered nurse, and you can see where he's going to ask, hey, I heard you just finished the AT&T exam. I'm headed to a room right now. What do I need to know? And this is where students are obviously working on interprofessional communication. So what would you communicate? What important information would you communicate to another nurse?
Mm-hmm.
And then this person's different in every assignment. In this case, it's a charge nurse, but sometimes it's a respiratory therapist. It could be a physical therapist. It could be a physician. It just depends. And this is where, in this case, there's some other core nursing concepts. She's going to ask about safety interventions and things like that, patient satisfaction. And then Preceptor Diana is going to be the same in each of these activities. And this is where you almost think of it like doing a care plan or a mini care plan, where you're looking at evidence-based practices, how you're going to know if those goals are kept, and what kind of interventions, and how will you know did they work. Does that make sense? And the students are just literally typing out their responses.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense what students are doing in this part?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to click next. And in this next part, there's just 2 multiple choice questions. I'll just select random ones just so you can see what it looks like. And in this case, one of them is a peds case, like mini case, and the other one's a geriatric. It just asks some other questions around this system, almost kind of like some other what ifs, just because they just presented with the single case, and then thinking about some different possibilities. Does that make sense in the lifespan questions? Okay.
Yeah.
And then this next part are just more assessment style questions where it'll ask them again about other typically relevant to the AT&T system in terms of other things that they have to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
There are 3 multiple choice questions.
So are these questions set in the software, or were they generated based on the student's response? I mean, this was already
good
preset
question.
in the course, right?
Yeah, these are all the same. There's nothing. The same questions will be displayed to students after each assignment. It's a good question.
Okay.
And then these are short answer responses. And
Okay.
Does this section make sense? What students would be asked?
It does.
Okay. And I'm going to go to the next one, and then at this point, this is where students will do a self-reflection. And do you have students do journaling or any other like metacognitive activity currently in the course?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, somewhat, yeah. Not to this extent.
Okay. And so you may decide to hide these if you're already having students critically analyze their performance, but we do try and get students, and you can hide a whole activity or certain questions. It's up to you. But if you like it, obviously just keep it in. But if
Right.
this is basically where students have to describe what they did to complete the exam. They have to explain the critical reasoning behind their decisions. And then this is I think really valuable even for program evaluation. This is sort of like the so what of the assignment. So how are they going to take some of these lessons they learned in this virtual environment and actually use them on actual patients?
In a real clinical setting.
Right. And so I think that's what can be really eye-opening in terms of the educational value that students took out of the assignment. And then you can also see where their heads are at in terms of what they need to improve upon and how they to be a better care provider.
Right.
And then once the student is complete with everything, they hit submit, and this is where they'll get all the automatic feedback. Now, don't judge me too harshly. I'm going to get a pretty bad score. We didn't do a very full exam, so it's going to be pretty low. So we got a whopping 8%. Yeah, so we failed, which as we should have, because we did not perform a full assessment. But let me just orient you to what we're looking at here. So you can see that there's this. Do you see this gauge right here where it says Student Performance Index? So this is what's really this is really actually the magical part of our simulation. Obviously, what you saw earlier is really technically neat. The animations, all the how can she answer all the questions, but really what's going to move the needle with your students is all the feedback that they get. And what we've been able to do is actually measure clinical reasoning. And in this assignment, we measure in two discrete components, in subjective data collection and objective data collection. And essentially what we do with this student performance index, that's our valid and reliable tool of measuring students' clinical reasoning in these areas, is we actually, it really pegs them against a student who just graduated from your program and who's doing a model exam. You can almost think of this like a progress index because it'll tell them their proficiency level. Obviously, where your students are at, most of them are not going to be proficient the first time they do an assignment. Like, it's just not a realistic expectation for most students because they're still developing at this point. And that's why we use something called the Digital Clinical Experience Score. Since I think students, the average on this assignment, I want to say, I'll have to look again at the undergraduate. I think it's around in the low 70s. And the health history, it's really low because that's a skill that's very difficult for students to do a comprehensive health history and ask all the appropriate follow-up questions that an expert would. They're still developing, and so like the health history, I want to say is like a 52. And what faculty told us, they're like, well, that's useful to know kind of where they're at and they're progressing to this proficient care provider, but they would never use that as a grade for students because it's not really that fair. And what faculty told us then is like, well, can you normalize or convert this to a grade that I can use for students? And what faculty told us is if a student got the national average on an assignment, that would be like a low B in their course. And so that's basically what we do is we convert this to a score that can be used as the grade. And so, for example, if the student did a little bit better than the national average, they'd probably get in the low to mid 80s. If they did a lot better than the national average, they would get in the probably high 90s or maybe even 100%. So does that make sense how the scoring works before I kind
of... It does.
Okay. And so how we even get this score, which is what this score is based off of, I'll show you that. So I'm going to click on subjective data collection. And this is exactly what students see after they complete an assignment. So you can think of this a little bit like the checkoff sheet, or it's a little bit more in depth than a real checkoff sheet that you do probably for your students, and that's designed to help them learn. So this is an HE&T assignment. So obviously some good questions would be asked about a history of a headache, asked about frequency or duration of the headaches. Would those be questions you'd expect your student to ask in this type of assignment?
Right, it is.
And so obviously I missed all these because none of them are blacked out. So I got 0 out of 32. But this is where your students get all this feedback. And so, for example, if you hover over these items, you can see it's going to give students a pro tip, which is really just the clinical significance of why is that important. And it also gives them an example question of how to actually receive that feedback. And what we can do, let's look at a student actually did a little bit better, since it's a little bit more interesting than my woeful performance. So I'm going to go to one of these example students that you can also see on your account.
Okay.
By clicking on the student results book. And I'll show you one of our example students that is a little bit better than I did. So let's take a look at. And just to orient you to what we're looking at right here, we're basically zooming in on an individual student's performance, but you can actually see everything at a glance. And this is how most faculty, give students a grade on these assignments. For example, Christine got a 92.3% on this assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And I can drill down and see exactly if I hit on completed. So then I'll get back to this view. So you can see she did a lot better. She got a 92. So she did, above average on this assignment. And if you look at her subjective data collection, she did a really good job, and you can see it's blacked out. So that means she actually got the point.
Oh, okay.
So she did a very complete exam. She actually got a 32 out of 32. So this is what it looks like if a student does a very thorough exam. And we score students on the items on the left-hand side. But this is really what helps students self-remediate. And this is where it really moves the needle in terms of their performance, is that they get all this feedback immediately. And this is where they get extra practice. And this is just what's really... Think of how time-consuming this would be for a faculty to grade every student. And this is where our software can do that automatically and grade it completely objectively.
Okay.
And so, for example, this student did okay on the physical exam, not great. So, for example, when she inspected the head and the face, she did actually correctly identify these findings. And so she got the full point for that.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them that she didn't get the points for, it looks like she just didn't do it. Like she didn't test or she didn't test peripheral vision, and it looks like she didn't mark anything. But this would have been there. It just so happens that Tina doesn't has normal peripheral vision, so there was no abnormal findings there, and they should have checked that box to receive the point. But it looks like she didn't even do it.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make sense? How they get scored on their interview, and then how they get scored on the physical exam?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then for faculty, and again, you could see their hallway responses, you could see their lifespan questions if they got that right. Most faculty don't drill down into this, but it's just extra practice for students. But you could see their response below model response, and this is all visible to you as an instructor.
So how would you disable the hallway conversations if you wanted to?
Mm-hmm. So, for example, and this is something we can talk about more in the next meeting. And
okay.
So, do you see where it says hide activity? You could just completely hide this. Mm-hmm. So when students would do this assignment, they wouldn't see it at all.
Oh, okay.
All I did is I clicked on the assignment and then I scrolled down to these individual activities, and this is where you can hide ones that, just because of time, you may not want students to do them.
Okay.
And and then what most faculty do is they'll do one of a couple different ways. Usually they'll transcribe. This is where it just depends, though. Some faculty do. This is something we can talk about more next time. But just some things to think about. Most faculty just use whatever DCE score they get. That's what the score they enter in their university grade book. But some faculty are like, you know what? As long as they get above an 80%, they gave an honest effort. So therefore, I'll give them the full point for that assignment. So that's another strategy that faculty use. Someone else to think about is, would you want to give students multiple attempts to get a better score, or did you see these more as one and done assignments?
That's something I'll talk with the rest of the faculty.
Sure.
If we did, I don't think they would get no more than maybe one attempt, maybe 2 attempts. They do it the first time, they don't get a good grade, then they may be able to do it a second time, but no more than 2 attempts, definitely.
Okay. And so some faculty, you can do reopening in our assignments, which is like corrections, so they don't have to start from scratch. The other way is that you technically can't limit the student attempts in the system, but you can see each student attempt that they have. Just because they have lifetime access, they can keep doing it. But you can see exactly when they submitted the attempts, and it's clear from the order. So that would be something you could implement. But in general, if I'm a student and I didn't like my score, I wanted to do better. If you make students start from scratch, they typically only need 2 attempts to do better, since it is time consuming for them to go through the whole assignment again. So that's usually an incentive for them to be much more careful. And that's how you know also they've implemented the feedback. So that's why some instructors, it just depends on your program. Some people more have a mastery learning philosophy where it's like, hey, however many times it takes them to get it right, as long as they get it right, that's what's important. Other programs take a little bit more of a realist approach where, they're like, well, we really want the students to take this seriously, so we only want to give them 1 attempt. And that way they're going to give a much better effort on that first attempt since it's a higher stakes. But I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that, and it's something you can think about for our next meeting. But it's just something to discuss with the other faculty. There's not a right or wrong answer to that question. It just depends on philosophically how you do it. Well, does that make? I know we've gone over a lot of content. Does that make a little bit more sense about what students are doing in one of our assignments with the digital patient?
Oh, absolutely.
Great. I'll show you another one really quickly, just so, because it's a different experience for students, these concept labs. These are actually some of our highest rated assignments. And I'll show you just real quickly. Obviously, you can explore this on your own later, but just give you an overview.
So once we implement Shadow Health into our course, I'll have a course number that I would send out or give to all the students. Is there a web page they need to go to, or?
Yep, and I'll show you all that next once we go over that. Those are really good questions. In the Faculty Resource Center, we actually make this pretty easy for you to copy and paste, and I'll show you exactly how that can be done.
Okay.
And basically, at a high level, what the concept labs are designed to do is to give a anatomy and physiology review, and also for students to practice learning normal and abnormal sounds. So this first part goes over the different ventricles, and you probably won't be able to hear the sounds very well over my computer speakers, but again, the goal is just so you have a high-level overview about what students do. Goes over the different valves. They can speed up or slow down so they can see exactly how the heart's working. And then the next part, it goes over basically where to auscultate, what it sounds like, and they get a nice picture-in-picture so they actually know when they auscultate that point what they're actually listening to in the heart, what area.
Oh, that's great.
And so you can see they go over all these different points. And I'll skip to the abnormal part. Obviously, they keep going. And then what also students really like is this is where they get a side-by-side comparison for a normal and an abnormal. Again, this is going to be difficult to hear on my speakers, but this is where they get the normal compared to an abnormal. And this just helps build up their fluency because this is usually a challenge for students. And we have a good list of abnormals that students can listen to. And then at the end of this activity, to get credit, we give them, or I'll skip to the end and just show you how that works. We have low resting heart rate. We've got a friction rub. We've got murmurs. And then in this identification activity, this is where to get credit on the assignment, the student has to correctly identify if it's normal or abnormal for each of these different points. Yeah, no, students really like these, and it's probably not rocket science, but what most instructors do is they'll have students do the cardiovascular concept lab and then do the cardiovascular exam on Tina, and that way, it tunes their ear, and they have much more confidence going into the assignment versus just being like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be listening for. And this just helps, again, build up their skills. Great. Let me show you. Let me make you the presenter again, and that way I can show you where to find some of the helpful resources to put in your syllabus. And so if you want to hit show or share my screen, yep. And do you see where it says My Resources in the upper right-hand corner? Yep. If you want to click on that and hit Faculty Resource Center. Correct. And This is where you can find a lot of really useful resources to help set up your course and even answer some small questions. Like if you're not sure what a button does or what the assignment settings are, this is basically your one-stop shop for the information that will help you learn our experience. And you want to click on the health assessment product.
Mm-hmm.
And after you do that, it should load. So this is our health assessment handbook. And as I mentioned before, this has a lot of really nice resources. It has a full demonstration. It's got these patient case overviews, which can be helpful when you teach with it, for just seeing what the cases are at a glance. So like for the Brian Foster case, you could download this, and then you could get a good sense, without having to go into his assignment, what are these high-level learning objectives that students are doing this assignment. And if you scroll down, you can also see his findings, his chief complaint, and it just at a glance you'll know if students are doing that, what's kind of going on in his case.
Okay.
But for right now, to answer the good question you asked earlier, let me click on where it says syllabus resources. And here's where our health assessment syllabus kit is really meant to save you some time. And once you click on that, it'll give you a bunch of, you want the BSN option.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I click on this document, this is really designed to, so this way you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And what I'll do is, so I'm going to hit enable editing. And again, you are free to copy and paste this verbatim. You can change this however you want. We purposely made this in a Microsoft Word document so you could edit it. But this will have, for example, like what is shadow health? The APA citation. And this is the point that you were talking about. This walks students through how to register with Shadow Health. The login page, the technical requirements, our support instructions. We also have a list of assignments in this document and about how long they take to complete depending on your assignment settings.
Oh, yes, that's great.
And then we just made this just to save instructors time, because usually when you're going through your syllabus, you're just copying and pasting the stuff in there anyways. And then the only other parts that we need to determine, this course pin, I can show you actually how to find that, which is not too bad. Even though there aren't any assignments in your course, you still have a course pin that will not change. So what I'm going to do is, you're still the Sandbox instructor, which is that practice one. I'm going to sign out of this to get back to your regular account.
Okay.
And now you're magically Vanessa again.
Okay.
But do you see this pin number right here?
Yes.
So that's not going to change. And actually, the other place you can find it, it's the same pin number, of course. But so you can see it at a glance there. I'm going to dismiss this. This is a little introduction video that first pops up for students. And you can just copy and paste this right here. Copy. And then I'll show you real quickly why this number is important. And I'm just going to paste this in here. Perfect. And I would also include the cost and payment method for students as well. But again, these are things we can worry about in our next meeting. But just so you understand kind of how this works, is let's pretend I was a student.
Okay.
And this is what the directions walk them through. Don't have an account, they navigate to this website. And then it tells them to click on this button. And then here's where they would enter in their PIN number. And then you'll notice that, yep, they can see your course.
There it is.
Columbus State University. Yeah. And that's why you don't have to upload, like in some other programs, you have to upload a CSV file of all your students. But when your students enter the PIN, that's how they get automatically registered, so you don't have to enter in their name and things like that.
Oh, great. Yes, that's easy enough.
Yeah, no, we try and make it as painless as possible. And now I know we went over a lot of content today, and if you want a couple ways, if you want some more guidance in terms of, let me go back. Obviously, you can go in and try the assignments out as a student. We also have some other really useful resources that can help you out between now and the next time we meet. So if I scroll on down, there's we have asynchronous training here available. So if I go down a little bit more, there's obviously tutorials that'll go over the grading and how to actually look at the student results book and things like that, similar to what we went over today, because we know there's just obviously a lot of content. And so you can find out a lot of like what all the things do in exploring this resource here. And just to keep the so the next meeting, and actually if you'd like to schedule that now, obviously we've recorded this, and so I can send this to you and the other faculty. Do you want to schedule the follow-up meeting so we can finalize some of the parts of your integration plan for the fall?
Yes, please.
Great. So let me pull out my calendar, and actually, you're going to be meeting with. I'm the director of training. You're going to be meeting with Carol, who's the instructional designer for Georgia, that area. So you're actually going to be meeting with her next time. She's great. She actually has a PhD, so she's a smart cookie. And so you're going to be working with her next time. But let me pull up my calendar, and then that way we can schedule the next meeting. When would be a good next time to meet with everyone?
The next time, let me see, we're in June 13th. How about in a couple of weeks? Can we do it like we can either do it the week before the 4th of July.
Yeah, that should work.
Which is when I will put.
Yes.
Let's do it the week before the 4th.
All right. So let me go to the new events. Yeah, that should work with her schedule. Let me just confirm that.
So like either that 27th or 28th of June works for me.
Yeah, let's take a look. She should have some moving. Yeah, do you want to do, how does 11 o'clock a.m. work on Tuesday, June 27th?
Tuesday, June 27th, that works.
Great.
And, at 11 a.m.
Right. And so, perfect. And so the things to think about next time when you meet is figuring out, we didn't get a lot of time to discuss this today, but figuring out what assignments you want to use and when you want to sequence them. Like, for example, some of them are probably going to be pretty easy. Like, you'll do HE&T before the HE&T assignment, Tina, before you do HE&T in lab. But we have these other cases, like the focus exams, and then thinking about where you might want to sequence those with the other assignments you might be doing. That would be something to think about. Thinking about and speaking with the other faculty about what assignment do you want to allow students multiple times to do this, or are these more one and done? Also thinking about what other assignments this might replace in your course. And I'll write all these points in the follow-up email. And then also lastly, thinking about how you might want to weight these assignments. Are these going to be worth 10% of the grade or 20%? Those are really just the basic components, those questions to answer so you have a solid integration plan.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, we've been sitting up here. We know we have to put a weight to this exam because if you don't, students don't take it serious enough.
Oh, your instincts are right on the money. And that's what we found as well. So, yeah, you guys are already in the right direction on that question then.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, hopefully the other two faculty members will be able to chime in on our next meeting.
Okay.
But definitely I'll send them a copy of what you recorded today. I'll send them an email letting them know about our follow-up meeting for June the 27th. And hopefully that's enough time for them to be able to plan to participate in the next one. So I'm excited. I'm going to play with it between now and the next meeting. So in case I have any questions.
Yes. And I would try loading one of the assignments, like load the orientation assignment. And after you close out GoToMeeting, since that should make your computer a little bit faster. And if you have trouble with it, just call our support line and they'll be able to walk you
Okay.
through some possible solutions to get some more performance out of your computer. No, I'm glad you're excited. And actually, if you'd like, I can send this recording and then the points to think about for our next meeting to everyone if
Okay.
that's just easier. And then I'll add everyone to the next
Oh,
meeting invite.
oh, that sounds great, Chris. Could you?
Oh, absolutely. Because the recording will take, it usually takes about a half hour to render and load. And so I'll also copy Carol on that as well. And so, yeah,
Okay.
you should have everything you need to prepare for the next meeting.
Sounds great. Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Great. And again, don't be shy if you have any questions along the way. And then you'll be seeing Carol in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much, Chris.
My pleasure. Have a great rest of your day.
You too now. Oh,
Okay.
you got the other two faculty members, right? Susan Greer and Desiree Huffman, right?
Yeah, let's take a look and make sure that their information is correct. But they should be on the. They should have gotten that same email that you got to activate their account. But actually, why don't we check really quickly just to confirm that everything, their email is right, so they actually get that. So I'm gonna make myself the presenter again real quick, and
Okay.
share the screen. Yep, and so I'm going to Introduction to Health Assessment, and then does this look correct? Obviously, you logged in, so you can see right there you signed in.
Yes, that's it.
Perfect. Great. Well, I'll email these faculty then the follow-up email. And yeah, I hope, you have
Now with Susan Greer, now that's between her last name and first name, that should be an underscore, not a dash.
Okay, let's change that right now. Just otherwise she may not get the perfect. This is always, it's always a good idea to confirm. So that's correct now?
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay, so let me then resend this so she actually gets the welcome email. And let me go back here and let me refresh this. Perfect. Resend. Okay,
That's
great.
it.
And she should get the welcome email.
Okay. All right. Looks good.
Good deal. And again, don't be shy if you have any other questions, and we'll be seeing you in the not too distant future.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Have a good day.
You too. All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.